episode 10 of Chris Sweeney Talks 2. Today I'm joined by Laura Norton. Now, she's a supporter of Just Stop Oil, a campaign group I'm sure many of you have seen. A lot of headlines, a lot of speculation, a lot have been shot down in public. So we wanted to talk to her, find out a bit more and understand it. So first of all, Laura, how are you doing today? And thanks for joining me.
Hello, I'm fine. Thanks, Chris. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm just a supporter of the campaign, not highly trained, not done this very often, but thank you for having us, and I hope I can answer some questions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, maybe that's a great place to start. Why did you want to, support the campaign? Was it something that you felt passionate about, or did you see other Just Stop Oil protests and things and want to join in? How did you get involved?
Good question. I've always worked in the environmental sector. I work in the environment. My husband works in the environment, and I've been terribly worried about climate change for a long time, and hearing the news, seeing what happened at COP26, hearing the IPCC reports coming out. It's all bad news. And earlier in the year, I think in February, I went to a local talk by some of the people that have joined the Insulate Britain campaign, and they talked about this new, more focused campaign saying Just Stop Oil. And I heard what that was, and I heard some of the statistics and figures. And after I'd finished crying, really, I thought I have to step up here. I've got two small children at primary school, and I cannot stand by and do nothing. I'm just an ordinary mum, but I cannot stand by and let the government lead us into what's going to be utter breakdown of our environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we can all sort of understand. But I think personally, from a member of the public, I'm no expert in climate change or anything. I think sometimes people see these reports, but we fail to connect it to our daily lives. We hear about reports and academics, and I wouldn't deny any of it. Of course, I believe in it all. But I think day to day, my life, I go around my life, and it probably doesn't affect me. We're all like that. It's quite difficult making that link, isn't it? In some ways, to tell the people this is actually affecting your life, and it will affect probably your children's life even more.
That's absolutely right, and it's a common thing. We call it soft denial. So it's, most of us are aware of the facts. We're aware that if we keep using fossil fuels, we keep burning oil and gas and coal, our children, it might be that our children aren't going to be able to live till 30. That's stark reality. Our children might not have the resources to live, and that's in this country. It's extraordinary, and this is happening already. This is happening around the world. We're seeing the war in Ukraine. This is all about oil, and this is all about gas. And so, like you said, it's very easy to say, oh well, it's not affecting me. I'm not seeing, there's no flood here at the moment, there's no catastrophe. It's easy to sort of just focus on business as normal, and that's the really frightening thing, I think. We're all intelligent, informed people. But how does it affect our lives, other than, as you said, this narrative that I was one of the people that stopped the first oil tanker on the 1st of April in Essex on behalf of the Just Stop Oil campaign. And people think, well, yes, my children aren't getting to school, or an ambulance can't get through, all these common things thrown at us. But if there's no climate, if it's an uninhabitable planet, we're going to have bigger things to worry about, really. So what we're doing through Just Stop Oil is what we're calling non-violent social disobedience. So this is a tried and tested method of trying to get our voices heard, really, to try and persuade the government to do something. So at the moment, they're leading us into genocide. I can't put it more strongly than that. They're leading us into mass death. We're looking at the moment, half the world's population, 3.5 billion people, are at high risk now and are going to have to move because of climate change. And you hear these figures, and what's 3.5 billion? It immediately becomes impossible, doesn't it, as an ordinary person, for us to, I can't get my head around those sort of figures. But here, what we're looking at here in the UK, we're looking at a government that's funding the war. We're paying Russia for their oil and their gas, and that's funding a war. We're seeing people dying because of our money, and we're seeing changes. We're seeing fewer frosts. We're seeing warmer temperatures. It's just, but as you say, it's very hard to get past this is just annoying civil disobedience. But people have realised that this is the only way the government are going to listen, and it's difficult. I mean, I'm a real goody two shoes. I don't fart unless I've got permission. And there was me sitting on the tarmac, you know, in front of a policeman, telling him I wasn't going to move until I was arrested.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could tell us a little about that. I mean, so, you know, in terms of leading up to that, were you quite nervous going to that? And what was the attitude because I've only seen the sort of YouTube and clips from the reporters, and it seems you all were very peaceful. And so, I mean, I think some of you were getting dragged away, particularly elderly people. They were almost getting dragged away by their ankles along the road. And I mean, it didn't seem people treat you very nicely, but you all kind of kept your counsel. What was the kind of vibe going in there and leaving? Did you guys have a talk about it? And, you know, what did you make of it sort of before and after that event?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question, actually, Chris. I've never felt in the whole of my not short life that much, I've got to say, love in the whole of my life. The solidarity with my team, the way this was set up was each team from a region would be told what we were going to do the night before, and we didn't know what any of the other people were doing, so it was all kept very separate. And we arrived at 3:30 in the morning on this site, and I've never been so frightened in the whole of my life. But I've never felt such solidarity for people who 3 weeks ago were strangers, and we were there trying to, I'm sorry, I don't want to cry, I mustn't cry, but we were there because we were worried about our children or our grandchildren. There were two amazing women in our party who were over 80, who were sitting there in deck chairs at 3 in the morning. It snowed 7 times that night, and we were sitting on the tarmac because we felt we had to, and nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to do this. It's horrific. It's very, very hard. But we came away and we're all in contact, and there's amazing support systems through the Just Stop Oil campaign. We're being supported. We're looking at what can we do next? You know, what are the next steps? Is the government listening? So it's been probably the most positive thing I've ever done in my life, which is unusual. It's not what I'd expected when I first took that step.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I appreciate if you do get upset, please, please feel free to stop right now. That's the last thing I'm going to do, Laura, is upset you. But so just start building on that. I mean, we talked about a lot about, the coverage of a lot of the Just Stop Oil things, and the protests you're involved in with, and people seem to focus on, well, I can't get to school, or I'm late for work on the traffic, and okay, that's an issue. But were you disappointed that maybe some media platforms or commentators didn't sort of maybe go into more detail on what you were actually doing? They all seem to be, from an outsider, seem to be very focused just on that immediate protest, which, yeah, I understand that, but there was a reason why you were doing it, and that doesn't seem to have come through or been reported on as much.
Absolutely agree. After the police let us go and we returned to our house, we looked at the news that day, and there was not a single mention, not one mention on the BBC of what we'd done. And the disappointment, I think, running through all of us is clearly that there's an embargo somewhere. We're being suppressed and we're being silenced, and it's part of the problem, really. For example, there was a report to the International Energy Agency released the stat a little while ago to say that if you reduce your heating temperature in your home over the winter by 1 degree, you can save something like 8% on your heating bills. And that was in the print media. Not once, nowhere that we could find was it mentioned in the broadcast media. It's not even been mentioned. So something's very wrong, and the reason that civil disobedience is our only option now is the system needs to change, and it's this system that's run by the big media companies, that's run by the fossil fuel companies. They're silencing, what we're doing. I don't like to use the word crazy, but it is. I think it's crazy if you're not worrying about or doing something about the climate crisis at the moment. It's so yes, I'm very disappointed to see that the media coverage has been very much focused on things that make us look ridiculous, I think, and that's very difficult. As a person, that's very difficult to do something you believe is honourable And I was utterly taken apart when I did an interview on GB News, and I was called hysterical for sitting quietly on a road asking that the government doesn't commit us to utter climate breakdown.
Yeah, I know it is. I mean, the perception sometimes you wonder. Obviously, you're doing it for a reason. I think one thing that's important to say is that, I don't know any of you personally, but I'm saying I'm sure you've all got lives. You all, you've all got heating. You've all got fridges. You use electricity. You're not living in this naivety of camping out in the middle of a field in tents, which I think sometimes people are trying to make. I don't think any of you are saying that we should go back to that, but if we can make changes. But I think the individual level, we can only make small changes. It needs to be from a government or a hierarchical level. Am I right? Is that kind of what your point of view is? Maybe I'm misreading that, but that's kind of what I take it as. There's only so much you can do as an individual, and we're not going to go back to living in like I say, we live in the modern world and it's here to stay. There's no point denying that.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's very much our message. If we'd arrived at the oil depot, in hair shirts on unicycles or something, proving that we don't use oil, then we'd have been accused of being out of touch with the ordinary man. I'm not an activist. I'm not a protester. I'm just a person, and the system that we all live in is oil-based, is fossil fuel-based. And we're not saying, we can't use oil and we can't ever use it. And we've got, at the moment, if we use the resources that already have planning and that are already being used up, we've got about 8 years. So we're not saying, let's just stop oil. That's impossible. But what we are saying is we've got that time, and within that we can transition to renewables, and it's easily possible. It's astonishing actually that the government aren't taking this decision quicker, because renewables, we're talking about wind, so onshore, offshore, we're talking about solar. It's quicker, it's safer, it's cheaper. It's now the renewables are the cheapest form of energy. It would reduce our cost of living crisis. We're all struggling to pay our bills at the moment, and it would reduce that if we switch to renewables. So yes, we're living in exactly the same world as everyone is, and this is why it's lovely that people do recycling. It's lovely that we talk about using the car less, but it's too late now. We're already going to see catastrophic change, and that's inevitable. But we need to sorry, it's too late. We need to do the big things. It needs to be the government making a decision for us, because we're not going to do it as individuals. We've passed that stage now. That's too late.
Yeah, because what we're talking about. One of your colleagues was on Good Morning Britain, which is, if anyone outside of Britain's watching, it's a morning show, and the interviewer asked the young lady, "But your clothes are made of oil, so you're a hypocrite." I think that's kind of what they were. That's what they're driving at, and I think we seem to be almost stuck on that kind of viewpoint. And okay, if that's someone's viewpoint, okay, fair enough. I guess they're entitled to it, but trying to push that debate on is proving difficulty. Is it quite frustrating for that as a group of you guys talked about that? Maybe there's maybe how we take it on, or how we get people more engaged. Is that something you guys have considered or discussed together?
Absolutely, we've discussed it ad infinitum, really, and everyone has got different opinions on how to answer and how to tackle that. Really, I know that the system has to change. What I think people are missing there is they're missing the point that the oil is destroying our lives, and we're all tied into it. We all have to buy clothes to keep warm. We all have to. We're all totally reliant. I don't know if you saw, there was an interview. Dale Vince, the owner of Ecotricity, was interviewed because he had given some money to Just Stop Oil. And an incredible young man, Louis, extraordinary young man, had disrupted a major football match by cable tying his neck to one of the goalposts.
I think it was Everton. I think it was.
Was it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Everton. Yeah, I remember watching the game. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Oh, did you watch? Okay.
Yeah.
And then Louis McKechnie, this incredible young man, interrupted the game. And there's an interview where Dale Vince is being interviewed, and very angry football pundits, terribly off the scale angry. How dare football be disturbed? And Dale, I think, was dealing with it very well. saying that he didn't know that that was going to happen as a particular protest, but he supported what we were trying to say. But the point for me is that someone had written beneath this, the first comment I saw was, "Dead planet, no football." And that, to me, those 4 words, dead planet, this is what we're looking at. We're not looking at a holiday ruined, we're not looking at a job loss, we're not looking at people having less money. We're talking about the death of humanity. I mean, it's Sir David King, who was the chief government scientific advisor. He said back in February last year that we had 3 to 4 years to move away from fossil fuels, or the future of humanity is at risk. And he's retired now, so he's got no reason to support one side or the other. He can be utterly independent. And someone like Sir David is telling us that it's the end of humanity. And so when people are saying, "Oh, but you're being a hypocrite," surely there's some humanity. Can you see that I'm a human, you're a human, we're all trying to live. But it's bigger than that now, and focusing on those things is wasting time. It's wasting people's emotions. It's wasting time. We need to act now. I mean, 3 or 4 years, that was said over a year ago. So we've got 2 or 3 years until we risk the future of humanity. How can we live with ourselves, really? So I find it is frustrating to hear that argument so many times, that we're all hypocrites. Yes, we are. The system needs to change, and that's why this is a campaign of civil disobedience. We need to break the system in order to rebuild a new, better, exciting, positive one. I think often we get tied up in you can't do this, you mustn't fly in an aeroplane, you mustn't drive your car. There's positives there. If we develop the renewables in our own country, we develop this incredible industry. We could build wind turbines using the steel infrastructure we've got around the country. We could have our own energy industry. We could work out all these technologies that just aren't there yet that we need to do. And there's lots of positives. So I'm also trying to get in there that there is hope and there is joy. But it's an exciting industry, and all these fossil fuel companies need to take their money out of fossil fuels and put them into developing these renewables, developing these new technologies that are going to save our lives. I mean, what is more important than that?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly off topic, but what, the awful events at the moment in Ukraine, and obviously that's disrupted a lot of the oil and gas supply, and the price has gone up, and even that, if we were much more self-sufficient, we would be in a much better position. Even that, it's another reason that we're always going to be beholden to another country or territory, and something like this happens again, which I hope it won't, but it probably inevitably will somewhere in the world. We're back in this situation. The cost of living's going up right now. Food prices are rising. But if we were maybe more self-sufficient, we might not be in this position. So it's probably another argument. But I know it's slightly off topic. But it's another sort of support for what you're saying.
I'm sorry to butt in here. It's not off topic. It's all about the oil. The war is about oil. The cost of living is about oil. The catastrophe in our living environment is all about oil. I'm sorry, when I say oil, I mean oil and gas and coal. That's a sort of a shortening for fossil fuels. It's all about the same thing. All of it is about fossil fuels. And so no, that's exactly it. The government is funding the war in Ukraine because we're not transitioning away to renewables. People are dying around the world. It's affecting. You see on the television, don't you, about the fires? You see about people. It's too hot to live. All this talk. I don't know. You hear a lot about 1.5 degrees, and we must stop this rise of 1.5 degrees. And I don't know about you, but that means nothing to me. It sounds quite nice. We moan about it's quite chilly here in Britain. Maybe that would be nice. But it doesn't actually explain that this is a global average. So this includes temperatures across the oceans, which doesn't really mean anything. But in some parts of the world, Spain, Portugal, Italy, we could be looking at 9, 11 degrees higher temperatures. A lot of the world is going to become uninhabitable. We're looking at already a third of the world's food production areas just being uninhabitable. We're talking about Vietnam, that produce a lot of the world's rice. So David King, in a recent interview, said that if things continue the way they are, Vietnam will be 90% underwater because of climate change. So in this country, when we look at how is it affecting us, well, food supply, even if it's worse temperatures, worse weather, things like that, we're looking at food shortages because the world won't be able to grow the food that we eat. So we're not insulated. We are in a small way, which makes it easier for us to say, oh, it's not my problem, or I don't have to worry about it now. But when we're looking at food shortages, when we're looking at energy shortages, we can't live here without importing food and things. It's impossible. So it's difficult. And maybe I should ask you, what is a way of getting that message across to people, so that they act? It's about getting the government to respond. And I don't know, Chris, what would you say in answer to that?
You put me on the spot now. It's went role reversal, and I'm usually asking questions. No, I mean, I think engaging with as much media as possible. I mean, I know that's maybe a slightly hypocritical, because, like you say, maybe some media don't want to hear it, but I do feel personally, from my own experience, when you're trying to interview certain groups or certain activists or whatever it may be, sometimes they don't want to speak to you because of maybe something you've done in your past, or the organisation you're with, or whatever it may be. And I sometimes think that's not the right method, because the more people you speak to, the better the message is. I know that's probably very simplistic answer, but no. I think that, I think when people start shutting down and pigeoning people who, like you saying with the type of shirts, or you're all wearing hemp trousers and all that, and we start getting these stereotypes, people start getting into their box, then I think things become very once you're in that box, you never come out of it. It's an echo chamber. Some of these people only talk to certain media, and then there's an echo chamber, and they're only hitting the same maybe 5, 10, 15% of the population, but the rest of them are thinking. So, it was good on you went on GB News, because I'd imagine you probably weren't expecting an easy ride. So, good on you for going on. If anyone doesn't know, GB News, online platform in the UK, it's a kind of, it's definitely right of centre. I don't know if it's right wing, but it's definitely right of centre. And I'm sure they weren't exactly super sympathetic, but fair play. They gave you a platform, at least to let you speak, which is something, and you took it. So yeah, that's what I would say. One thing I would ask you about was that, we were talking there about the temperatures and things going up, and just my own personal experience. In the summer of 2019, I happened to be in Switzerland, in the kind of mountainous region, and I was in a kind of small guest house, and it had no air conditioning. And it was roasting. The temperature was in the 40s. I know people may think, no, you're talking rubbish. It was that hot. There was a real heat wave those 2 weeks. It was roasting. And a couple of days later, I moved to a city which we were traveling, and I stayed in a hotel with air conditioning. And the difference was unbelievable. But the couple of nights before we were in this place, I was tearing my hair out, and that was only for a couple of days. And I don't know if maybe it's very naive of me to say, but I don't know if that is like maybe a sort of future where people maybe don't realise that, life will be pretty uncomfortable. We live in quite a temperate environment, but I think that's what you guys are saying. It could change pretty quickly, and it could get quite uncomfortable for a lot of us. Day-to-day life might not be or as enjoyable as we have it right now.
That's absolutely right, and enjoyable is, I think we've taken it for granted, haven't we? Something that we talk about a lot is security and knowing what's going to happen in the future, and if there's insecurity, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Life is a lot harder, and for our children. So I know you say you've got a son, you've got kids as well. For our children, we can't offer them that security. I can't say to my children, you can leave school and go to higher education, you can get a job. Because not only will it be less comfortable, it might be that large parts of the planet are so uninhabitable that there's not only is there climate breakdown, but social breakdown. People will be fighting for resources. I can't say to my children, you save some money because you'll be able to go to university, or because we don't know how uncomfortable. We don't know with sea level rises. It's just so on this current trajectory. The current trajectory, if we keep using fossil fuels, we're looking at 10 million deaths a year from heat stress. 10 million people dying from heat stress.
It's mind-boggling, those numbers. When you say a number like that, it's
isn't it?
it's mind-boggling.
It's exceptional, really. I find obviously I'm sure you've seen the film Don't Look Up. Adam McKay, and this is what he's a big supporter of the Just Stop Oil campaign. This is what he's writing about. I feel, to be honest, sitting here talking to you about this, I feel like I'm living in either that film or some sort of nightmare, because I'm talking to you about not knowing whether my children are going to have an environment in which to live. And there are people out there who are arguing about the fact that I'm wearing clothes or I've got a car. It's going to be too late, and we need the government to listen. So people like me, I can't afford to take time off work and get arrested. I can't go to prison. I've got 2 small children. But I'm risking that. And I think once you break through the soft denial and you engage with the horror and the pain of it, which is really difficult, and I utterly empathise if people can't do that for whatever reason. It's so difficult. But I think you're absolutely on the nail there when you talk about talking about it. What can I do? A lot of my friends, they've got kids, they work with children, they can't have a criminal record, they can't sit in front of an oil tanker. What can they do? And it's what you said, you can talk to people, you can open the conversation, because if we get 3.5% of a population is all you need to have a consensus for there to be a revolution. That's the way it's always happened. We need 3.5% of us to say, hang on, I'm not okay with this. This system needs to change. The government is putting. George Monbiot summed it up beautifully recently. I saw on a statement he made for Just Stop Oil. They're putting the fossil fuel industry ahead of the future of humanity. The fossil money. They're putting money, and we all know that money is where everything leads. It's always about the money. But it's reached a point now that life is being lost now because of fossil fuel use. 1 in 5 people in the world die because of particulates from fossil fuel burning. 1 in 5 people now die because of fossil fuel use. 99,000 people in the UK. It's mind-boggling, and I think as you've said, it's this fact that it's so massive, it's very hard to engage with, and if you can ignore it and live life as normal, I don't blame anybody. And we're not about shaming anyone, but this is why we want the government simply to sign an agreement saying there'll be no new oil and gas from now. So there are obviously there's oil and gas that we're burning and that we're using at the moment, but we're saying no new oil and gas, because if they continue, there's 40 new sites that they want to develop. The UK wants to develop for oil and gas 40 new sites, and that'll something like treble the outputs that we should be reducing. It's his insanity, really, and I don't know. I feel like I'm going a bit crazy sometimes.
Sure. No, I mean, you've been very generous with your time, Laura. I just had a couple more quick questions I want to ask you. What I wanted to ask you about was we're talking about the UK, and we are in a fairly we're in a very developed country. We have access to, everything we could want. I know not everybody, but relative to some parts of the world, we're obviously very, very affluent. There's no point denying that. Is there an argument, or some people's argument would be, right, we might do this, we might take action, but another country in Africa, country X or country Y in Asia isn't going to bother. So what's the point? Is that something you encounter as well? Because I can imagine a lot of people think, well, they're not doing it, so I'm not doing it. So let's just carry on.
Oh, completely. That's asked a lot, and Yes, it's an excuse that's used a lot for why should we do that. But we need to look at everything that we do. What we call it the global north. So it's the developed companies that such as the UK. Everything that we do here in the global north, we have a much larger carbon footprint, so that we're burning a lot more fossil fuels per person because of the way that we live. So we have, I'm sorry, I don't have the figures here in front of me, but we have far higher bigger carbon footprints than many other countries. And we need to lead the way. And the government would argue, actually, compared to a number of the other countries in the global north, actually, we're doing okay in terms of reducing our emissions. But doing okay isn't enough. So it's the people living in the global south, the people in countries across Africa, Asia, who are suffering now and are dying because of our emissions. So we need to step up, we need to take responsibility, and we need to step out of our comfort zones and say, okay, I've had a hard year, I've been at home because of COVID for a year, but I don't need to go on a mini break to Rome, or I don't need to buy a new car. It's looking at things in perspective, really, and there are people suffering now, and we have to look beyond ourselves, and we have to lead the way. And we're such an important part of what's going on in terms of the size of the UK and our strength in the global market, and we have to lead the way, otherwise we've got no chance whatsoever.
Yeah, well, I think leading the way is, it's a very small anecdote from my own life, but where I live, we have recycling, and you have clothes, food, kind of glass and plastic, and then your waste. And I can't say who told me, but the recycling is not being recycled; it's just been thrown away because there was something to do with like the trucks or picking it up or whatever. But people are going down there, and we're putting the recycling in, and we think we're doing our bit, and it's getting thrown away. And again, that's a systematic thing where it's easier to throw it away than deal with the actual issue of properly recycling it. And I think these things are all bound up. And one thing I want to ask you finally was that in terms of support, you were talking about Adam McKay there and Don't Look Up, and the electricity firm executive, but not a lot of people are backing Just Stop Oil. There's very few people seem to have a platform to stand up and say, right, I'm behind this. I'm going to help these people, particularly all the politicians, I think, and apart from the Green Party. But in Britain, I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think any major politicians have really stood up and sort of backed you guys. I could be wrong there, but it seems like you're almost it's you against everyone else in this argument because of the traffic jams and the disruption is so unpopular with voters or some voters that it seems like everyone's siding away from you. And is that something you think you'd benefit from? Maybe people with a platform being a bit braver and saying, yeah, I back this.
Oh, utterly. This is the problem with, I've always been a believer that the environment should be a cross-party thing. It should be a coalition, maybe the Green Party, with whoever is in power, because if people want to win votes, then for them to step up and say, actually, I agree with your disrupted journey to work or whatever is very difficult. And so if a politician steps up and agrees with the Just Stop Oil campaign and then gets voted out, that doesn't help anybody. So this is why I think the Just Stop Oil campaign is a coalition, and it's lots of different people all supporting the same goal. And Extinction Rebellion is one of the earlier groups that's doing a fantastic job as well. Extinction Rebellion, one of their demands is they would like a citizens' assembly. So this is where people have a chance and their voice gets to be heard, no matter who is in power. So it's utterly unrelated that we need to take the environment out of politics, really, because whoever's in power has got too much power over us. When we didn't vote for climate breakdown, I didn't vote for the future of my children to be cut short. I'm not voting for any of that. So this is what we need to do. And I absolutely agree. I think it's shameful that politicians are ignoring what's going on, really. And you have some people who sit outside Parliament for, I think it was 37 days on hunger strike and extraordinary and get ignored. And it's only now that the government has said, okay, then we'll have we'll talk to you, we'll engage with you. It's madness, really.
Yeah, sure. Well, Thank you so much for taking the time, Laura, today. I mean, one thing before we go, maybe you could tell people if we've piqued people's interest, and I'm sure we have. Well, you have, not me. I'm just the sort of support staff here. You're the star of the show. In terms of maybe is there a website, and also maybe is there some sort of piece of literature or a book or something that you would recommend that maybe someone thinks, right, I want to find out a bit more of this, but I'm not going to wade through a big scientific report. Is there something that you'd recommend people to maybe to look at and maybe get an idea, and even if they don't want to support the campaign, at least maybe understand the situation a bit better?
Gosh, yeah, there are lots of sources of information. I think that's half the problem, isn't it? There's so much out there. Certainly, the juststopoil.org website has got links to all our information, our press office, if people want to know more information. People like Sir David King, there was a recent interview that he did, which I'd highly recommend, where he summarises the situation in very clear terms.
Don't look up, but don't look up. I mean, for people who haven't seen that, was that quite, because obviously you're inside this world, was that quite, you see, it was almost like a documentary almost, or a sort of a mockumentary, shall we say? I mean, sort of watching that, is that something maybe people should watch, and actually that is kind of people like yourselves experience, although it's a Hollywood movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and many other big stars?
Yes. Don't look up. It's a fantastic film because it's analogous, and you'll see interviews with Adam McKay, and he's saying actually he wrote it because he was concerned about climate change, and it's exactly what's happening, this media shutdown, that we're not talking about it, and that in the film the government don't react in the way that you'd expect, and some of these scientists who know that we're going to all get killed in 6 months are ignoring it, or think that they can put money before actually saving the planet. It's extraordinary. Yes, I'd highly recommend it because it adds a little bit of humour in there. I think that's really important, and I'm very glad it's not just a heavy hitter. It's actually it includes some humour, and you need that, and you need some of the joy. Otherwise, life is unbearable. So yes, I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, hopefully we've brought some entertainment, some joy and information today. Once again, Laura from Just Stop Oil supporter, thank you very much for joining me, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you, Chris.